Precisa aferir a pressão, medir a glicemia ou tomar uma vacina? Na Raia tem exames, testes e calendário vacinal completo. E o que é melhor, tem sempre uma Raia aí perto de você. É fácil, prático e rápido. Dá para ir entre uma música e outra. Procure nossos farmacêuticos. Quanto mais você conhece o que a gente faz na Raia, mais você se cuida.
Ei, você que tá aí curtindo esse podcast, você tem caspa? Ah, então nem precisa mais ficar com vergonha. Chegou a nova linha Dercos Anti-Caspa DS da Vichy. Ela elimina 100% da caspa visível, sem ressecar os cabelos. E para todos os tipos de cabelo, seco, normal ou oleoso. Dá até para usar blusa preta. Não é à toa que a Dercos Anti-Caspa é a marca mais recomendada por dermatologistas no Brasil e no mundo. Saiba mais.
Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about ways to become happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative. This week, we'll talk about ways we can shape our surroundings to shape our behavior, and we will also share some listeners' ideas for holding on to memories of beloved people who have died. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the five senses, secrets of adulthood, all that stuff, human nature. I'm in my little home office in New York City, and joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister, Elizabeth Kraft. And Elizabeth, I will be seeing you very soon in Kansas City.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And Gretch, we're going to go back to sharing a room. It'll be just like our trip to England.
Exactly. Sleepover time. But before we jump in, we got an interesting response from a listener after our very special episode 490, where we had dozens of hacks from listeners about how to get regular exercise.
Yes, this comes from Sophia. She says, I would like to add a fitness hack that has changed my life that I didn't hear on your fantastic recent episode, which is choosing to identify as an athlete. I discovered how powerful this can be when I decided to sign up for a triathlon and immediately began referring to myself as a triathlete. This naturally trickled down into all sorts of shifts in language, attitude, and habit. Whenever I exercised, I was no longer just working out, I was training. It felt like it was for something, not just another drop in the bottomless exercise bucket. I felt an obligation to train because an athlete doesn't just skip out on practice when they're not in the mood. I had fun finding an electrolyte mix I loved, optimizing my nutrition for fueling and recovery, and eventually began doing nightly yoga for improved muscle recovery and better sleep because these were all things an athlete would do. And after all, I was one of them. This concept doesn't need to rely on having a specific event to train for either. 7 months ago, I suffered an injury that made me unable to swim and dashed my triathlon dreams for the time being. So now I'm a cyclist, and my only goal is to improve my performance and enjoyment of the sport. Any other exercise I do is cross-training. I've always wanted to be the sort of person who is seen as outdoorsy and athletic, and now that I've declared it to be so, my dream has quickly become reality. And we think she's probably a rebel, Gretch.
We think she's a rebel because appeal to identity is often how rebels change habits, because exactly as she said, it's like, I'm doing it because this is who I am.
Yes.
What does an athlete do? An athlete trains. She's not necessarily a rebel because that can work for all four tendencies. I'd be curious to know. And of course, if you don't know about the four tendencies, you can find out if you're a rebel or an upholder, a questioner, or an obliger at GretchenRubin.com/quiz.
And then, Gretchen, we also got this from Haley. She said, I'm a big fan of the Happier podcast, and a few months back, I listened to episode 473, which highlighted milestone birthdays and how writer Megan Verrett approached her 70th. 2 days ago, I celebrated my 29th birthday and decided to embark on a 30 before 30 challenge. Following Megan's lead, I reached out to 30 of my friends and family members and invited them to propose an experience for us to have together over the upcoming year. That way, when I turn 30, I'll have a smorgasbord of memories to look back fondly on. While turning 30 may not be as momentous as turning 70, I am single and have spent spent recent years watching loved ones get married and have children whilst feeling like I'm lagging behind them. This idea was so powerful in helping me reframe my thinking and embrace a new decade, as well as take stock of all the love I have in my life. I am so excited to get started and thankful to you for sharing this idea.
Well, this is great. I love that it's all about creating these memories and reframing. It's so fun to see people running with this idea.
Yes, I love it. Happy birthday, Haley.
Yes. This week, our Try This at Home suggestion is to shape your space to shape your behavior.
So, Gretch, explain what this means.
Okay, so one of the things that keeps coming up in a lot of the books that I've written is the idea that the way that our spaces are affects our behavior, our actions, our attitudes. So, for instance, in the book Better Than Before, where I was talking about habit formation, I talked about a lot about the strategy of convenience, that, we're just much more likely to do something if it's convenient. And so by shaping your surroundings, you can make something more convenient. So let's say you want to practice the violin. If you're like, I'm going to set up a chair by a window and I'm going to have my music stand set up and I'm going to have this everything, or I'm going to make a beautiful place to read, or I'm going to get all the clothes off of the treadmill and put a television there so it's really easy to exercise. That's a way you can shape your surroundings to make your habits better. In Outer Order, Inner Calm, I talked about the way that we project our identity into our environment and how that also shapes our behavior. Like if you see things around you, well, like we were just saying with our listener, if everything around you is reminding you, hey, you're an athlete, if your surroundings reflect that, that's going to help you live up to that identity. And then in Life in Five Senses, there was a lot about our surroundings, the way things feel, like what you hear, what you touch, the smell of environment, and how your surroundings can shape your behavior and shape your habits. But it's not always something that we think about kind of indirectly. Like, okay, given that I want to get XYZ done, how might I make decisions related to my space that are going to make it more likely for me to do something that I want to do or less likely for me to do something I don't want to do.
I could see someone who wants to cook more really changing the shape of their kitchen.
Yes.
To make it conducive to cooking, for instance.
Or even just changing what's out on the counter.
Yes.
Because like if you have a lot of stuff out on the counter that you never use, but then it's a hassle to dig out something that you actually use frequently, you might think about that.
Yeah.
Or just even having the tools at the ready so that you're making it easy to follow that. I was thinking about some examples that I've seen in the people around me that I think were very clever. So Elizabeth, you and I, you remember Henry, our founding producer.
Yes.
I love Henry Malofsky, brilliant guy. And he loves to surf. And when he moved to Los Angeles, he said, I moved near the beach because I would always talk to people in Los Angeles and they would say, oh, the funny thing is I never go to the beach. And he's like, I really, really did want to go to the beach. I really wanted to bring that aspect of Los Angeles into my life. I wanted to surf. I wanted to visit the beach. So I made it easy to go to the beach. So I lived so that I would have that behavior. Is that true, Elizabeth? Do people in LA not go to the beach that much?
Many of us rarely go to the beach, Gretch. I don't
Right.
remember the last time I went to the beach, I must admit.
There you go.
Took the dogs, maybe.
Right. A friend of mine moved into a new apartment. She had to do a big renovation. And in her kitchen, she said she specifically did not include a little table where you could sit and eat breakfast or you could sit and eat a casual meal. Because she's like, I really don't like it when people don't use their dining rooms. I really wanted us to actually eat all our meals in the dining room. And so I just shaped our surroundings so there is simply no other choice. That's the only place that you can eat in her apartment is at the dining room table. And then I did a little happier, which I don't know if it's aired yet or not, about Charles Darwin and his sand walk. He made this 1/4 mile walk around his home where he would walk a couple times a day and he would do more or fewer loops depending on his physical condition and his day, whatever. But this is when he did a lot of his thinking. And he would even sometimes call it like his thinking path because he created that because he knew that walking was a good way for him to think. And he went out of his way to build a path in order to have the habit of thinking and walking. And, all the research shows that was a really good idea to do because walking really does promote thinking and creative thinking. So it just got me thinking, well, without building a whole walk or moving to a whole new city, what are the things in my own surroundings that I might think about? How about you, Elizabeth? Can you think of some examples of this yourself?
Well, speaking of walking, I mean, my treadmill desk, adding a treadmill desk, which was a gift from you, to my office, that hugely shaped my behavior. I mean,
right.
I started walking so much, and I think that really sent me on my whole walking path. And that was a big thing, but a simple thing that made a huge difference.
But it's funny, Elizabeth, because you have a big office, and my office is so small, I don't really have room for it in my surroundings. I would love to have it, but you had the room to add it to your surroundings. And also you were willing to do it. I think if somebody wanted an extremely elegant office, they might not want to plunk down a treadmill desk in the middle of it, but you shaped the surroundings in a way that worked for you.
Yes. Now, how about you, Gretchen? Have you done this?
Well, I want to do this because this has got me thinking, I keep talking about watercolor and I'm in a watercolor.
Yes.
But I was thinking one of the reasons that I don't is that it takes a lot of effort to get everything out and set it up in the right way because you have water. So I can't just do it at my desk and watch a YouTube video about how to do watercolor because I would never want to have a big open thing of water right near all of my precious computer stuff. And I was thinking, what I need to do is just set up a place and leave it set up. I give this advice all the time to people, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do it, which is if you have to unpack and pack stuff, you're just not going to do it. I need to figure out where in my apartment I'm going to just get everything out, set it up, so that the water is not a risk and really do it.
Yes, that will definitely influence your behavior. And the other thing in my life, Gretchen, is our backyard. We have a really nice sized backyard, but when we moved in, it wasn't a very pleasant space.
Yeah.
And Adam really set about making it somewhere you want to be, having very clear, comfortable seating areas. We have our fire pit. And by shaping that, we have absolutely changed our behavior so much to where we're out there all the time now. And when we have people over, everybody always ends up in the backyard.
Yeah.
So that's a good example of this.
Now, I will say that there is kind of a tension in this, which is you don't want to do a lot to shape a surroundings if it's really not going to work. And I would say this, my secret of adulthood is never pay to hem a pair of pants that you really don't want to wear. Because if you're really not going to use a treadmill, if you're just look, I know who I am and I'm not going to use a treadmill desk, don't buy a treadmill desk thinking that it's going to fundamentally change your inborn nature. You knew that you would use it, or you felt fairly confident that you would use it. But I do think sometimes you don't want to make something better if really maybe you want to just abandon it altogether or just go in a completely different direction. And this is something that all of us just individually need to know for ourselves. But it is something to be aware of.
Yes. Well, I'd love to hear from people, Gretchen, about what they've done to shape their behavior. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because I bet a lot of people might get inspiration. So let us know if you do try this at home and how shaping your space to shape your behavior has worked for you. Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@GretchenRubin.com. Or as always, you can go to the show notes. This is happiercast.com/494 for everything related to this episode.
Coming up, we have a very simple happiness hack. But first, this break. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it is easy to let your priorities slip. But you have to think about what are your non-negotiables. Well, I know for me, Gretch, therapy is a non-negotiable. I have never ended a therapy session and said, I wish I spent that time doing something else. I'm always glad that I did therapy.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You can just fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/GretchenRubin today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/GretchenRubin. Okay, Elizabeth, this is a happiness hack that we learned on our trip in England. One of the people on our trip, Keith, mentioned this to me, and I thought this was just a handy little hack, especially when you're traveling from the world of Fahrenheit into the world of Celsius, or back again.
Yes. So Keith pointed out that 16 Celsius is 61 Fahrenheit, and 28 Celsius is 82 Fahrenheit. So if you can just remember 16, 61, 28, 82, then if you hear the temperature in Celsius, you can kind of gauge where it is. You might not know exactly, but you have a sense.
But you're like, it's hot, it's cold.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's useful. I love a great mnemonic. You love a great mnemonic. We thought that was really fun. And now for fun with the five senses. So we have recently gotten a lot of suggestions from listeners about how they've used the five senses to connect more deeply with other people, to hang on to memories, to pay tribute to beloved people who have died. And we just wanted to share some of these really kind of creative, beautiful ideas that people have had.
Yes. Gretchen, this first one comes from Azizi, who's one of the hosts of the Happier Ladies podcast.
Yes, shout out Happier Ladies.
Yes, we love the Happier Ladies.
Yes.
Azizi says, I'm writing to share about a way to use the five senses framework that may be unexpected. Last July, I lost my best friend to cancer. It was a long, drawn-out journey, and her last days were both meaningful and peaceful. I met her during my freshman year in high school, and we remained central in each other's lives through young adulthood, careers, marriage, and motherhood. Her family asked me to give the eulogy at her memorial a year later and to say a few words about her life from my perspective. This was my first time being assigned the important but difficult task of memorializing someone. As you can imagine, I struggled with my own grief as well as how to capture so many years of memories and experiences. One night, as I was journaling, it occurred to me to organize my memories of my friend using the five senses framework. I thought about the sounds we heard together, Janet Jackson music videos, the sound of her singing to her son, the chickens she tended in her backyard. Taste, eating shabu shabu alongside her family, the vanilla cake with strawberries and whipped cream icing she preferred for her birthdays. Touch, the feel of wet clay from our ceramics lessons, soaking in the hot springs at Lake Elsinore, also a smell due to the stinky sulfur of the minerals present. By the time I got through all the senses, I felt so much gratitude, recalling many joyful memories. Because I used the senses as my guide, I felt the moments captured were even more vivid. When it came time to write my speech, I wove together some of the memories along with other important milestones in her life to help the participants at the memorial appreciate the richness of her life.
That's so beautiful. Similarly, Melissa writes, I'm writing to say thank you for your great ideas in Life in Five Senses. I am using the Five Senses exercise to write notes to my daughter about her late father, who passed away when she was 9. She is now 18. I like to write, and I decided to write memories about my late husband to our daughter to help her keep his memory alive and learn more about her dad as time goes on. The Five Senses concept is helping me to brainstorm memories and write them in a more vivid way. Thank you for the inspiration. That's interesting that she says vivid, because that's also what Azizi said. And I think that is what is special about these kinds of memories, is they are so powerfully vivid. And then she also says, thank you for the great idea for college care packages. I will be using them next year when my daughter is in college. That's great. I love to hear what is landing with people who are going through that period like me, empty nest, open door. So that is super fun.
Yes. And Gretch, here's a different way somebody's tapping into the five senses. Stephanie says, my sister just sent me the most thoughtful gift for my 40th birthday, and it felt very five senses, so I had to share. It was a food capsule of our childhood. I live in Missouri, and she's in our home state of California. She door-dashed a wide variety of foods that played a critical role in our childhood. Examples: goldfish, our standard afternoon snack. Dove bars, the ice cream our grandmother always had stocked for our visits. Waffle mix, our mom made Belgian waffles every Sunday for us. She also sent an email detailing each item and the memory it was connected to. Of course, most of them I immediately recognized as I unpacked the bags. It was such a whimsical and thoughtful way to celebrate a milestone birthday and bring back wonderful memories.
How fun!
Yes, Gretch, this reminds me of when you and I ate Pop-Tarts recently to bring back the taste of Pop-Tarts at our grandparents'.
Absolutely. I wish I had thought to send that to you as a birthday gift. I think like a whole box of things. That would have been super fun. Peter wrote, I wanted to report on what I've been doing after I took the What's Your Neglected Sense quiz. Okay, and side note, if you haven't taken the What's Your Neglected Sense quiz, you can go to GretchenRubin.com/quiz and take this quiz, and it will tell you what is your most neglected sense. Peter continues, I wasn't surprised by the answer I got. Smell. I'm one of those people who never notices a smell until someone points it out. In your book, you mentioned the hardware store smell, and I decided to try to pay attention to the different smells of stores I visit. Target, Home Depot, my favorite liquor store, the indie bookstore I go to, all have very distinct smells. Also, just in a regular grocery store, I try to notice how different sections have different smells. It makes running errands much more interesting. I love this idea.
Yes, I love the hardware store smell.
I do too. And one of my most vivid memories of Eliza's childhood is we walked into Bloomingdale's and she stopped right inside the front door and said, ooh, I love that department store smell. And I realized there is such a department store smell.
Yes.
But I had never noticed it until she pointed it out. That's why I had to write Life in 5 Senses, because it's very hard for me to notice what's going on around me. So I thought that was super fun.
Gretch, that makes me think of the smell of the store Better Cheddar in Kansas City, which is very specific and also evokes Christmas because we always go there when we're home for Christmas.
Yes, just you saying that, my mind is flooded with a Better Cheddar. So I would buy a candle. Better Cheddar.
Yes, I would love a Better Cheddar candle.
If people are intrigued by using the 5 senses in this way, I have a 5 senses journal where you can keep a journal using the 5 senses, which is super fun. And it also has places for you to do 5 senses portraits. So it could be for someone who has died, or a portrait to give as a gift to somebody, or it could be a portrait of a vacation you took or a place you go every year. So anyway, I'll post a note to the 5 senses journal. I've never seen anything like it. I'm super proud of that journal. It's really cool, and it's unusual. I think if you're a journal person, it's an unusual kind of journal.
Yeah, it's also a great way to capture your child at this age.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Gretchen. And now, instead of a listener question, we have a question for listeners. You have a question for listeners.
I have a question. Okay, listeners, hit me up with your insights, observations, resources. Okay, I feel like the world is my research assistant, and I am turning to everybody for ideas related to the open door phase of life, but which most people refer to as the empty nest phase of life. We have a date for Eleanor. We have a time slot, a drop-off time slot. This is coming, and I'm thinking a lot about it. And I have some questions for listeners just to respond to, because I'm just trying to cast about and get a sense of how different people think through this. So here's some questions. If you have something to say, hit me up. Okay, so one question I'm thinking about is, as you go into this phase, do you want more abundance in your life or more simplicity? Are you looking to downsize, to simplify, to empty out, to get rid of things, to clear clutter? Or are you looking to have more abundance, to collect things or renovate or improve or add on? Or you think, ooh, now let's get a dog. Or you think, oh, it's so nice not to have anybody to take care of. Do you want something like a garden or plants, which they are abundant, but then they're also demanding? So do you want to say no to more things? Do you want to say yes to more things? So I'd be so curious. I want both, I think, in different areas. That's interesting.
Yes, that's a lot to think about, Gretch.
Okay, here's another thing to think about. This stage hits different people differently, and I'm trying to, and I know from talking to people that a lot of people are thinking about it well in advance. They have preschoolers, and they're already thinking about, okay, how am I going to handle this period? And so I'm trying to think about how we can know ourselves as we go into it and how it might affect us. So one thing I'm thinking about is it different for people who are introverted and people who are extroverted? But the funny thing is I could see this playing out in opposite ways. And maybe both things are true for different people, because certainly not all introverted people are the same and not all extroverted people are the same. Okay, because I could see it working like this. If you enjoy being alone, you might find this emptiness, open door phase less difficult, because if you're somebody who just always likes to have people around, it might be really hard for you to have your house emptying out, right? Because people talk about the loud quiet. But if you really love being alone, that might be something that would be a gain for you. Even though you're sad that your child is gone or whatever, that might be something that you would enjoy. So, but I could also see that if you're an introverted person, maybe you would find it more difficult, because my sense is that for some people who are introverted, they get a lot of social energy from their family. They're kind of homebodies. They don't really enjoy going out. They don't really seek to do that many social things with people who aren't really super close to them. And so for them, it might be really really hard because they've lost the kind of social energy that really suits them. And so I'm just curious. This has just occurred to me in the last few days, and I'm trying to think through how does it affect people. Also, if you're a book person or a tree person, now I could hypothesize that this would be easier for a book person because it's turning a new chapter. But maybe circumstances play a role. Let's say everybody in your family went to the University of Nebraska and your child is going to the University of Nebraska. Even though they're gone, it's like that's a tree. Maybe you perceive that as a tree thing to do because now we're all rooted together. Or if they're nearby, that might feel tree, but maybe not. Or what if they go away or it's a place you don't know? Does that make it harder for a tree person? Or does book versus tree not really play into this in that way? This is how it is when I'm starting a project. I'm just throwing spaghetti against the wall and trying to think things through. And so sometimes, I have had many cases where somebody will write an email of 3 sentences and I'll just have like a gigantic light bulb go on over my head.
Yes.
So tell me what you're thinking, what you're experiencing.
Or what you experience. Some people may be well past this.
Oh, 100%. That might even be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the time, not have known what they were going through, but now 10 years later, it's all very clear.
And yes, and don't worry about sticking to these topics. Any observation, any resource, a novel that you read that you felt like shed light on it. I am at that really exciting, fun part where I'm just looking for ideas and trying to come up with the distinctions and frameworks. And, I've got 11 of these and 3 of these. So this is one of the most fun parts for me. And so any thoughts, observations, questions, anecdotes, let me know.
I can't wait to hear what people have to say, Gretch.
It's going to be fascinating.
All right, coming up, I have a demerit from our time in England. But first, this break.
Okay, let's hit demerits and gold stars. And this is an even-numbered episode. It's your turn to talk about a demerit.
All right, Gretch. Well, here is my demerit, which is when you and I were in England, we had a couple of days in London.
Yeah.
And we were walking around a lot and we were looking for different neighborhoods and places that we wanted to see. And I let you do all of the navigating with Google Maps, as I am wont to do, to turn over a task like that. But I wish I had taken the opportunity to really learn how to use Google Maps because for some reason I find it confounding. And had I just taken the time and learned, I could have navigated us. 1, that would have relieved you of that duty. And 2, now I'd be comfortable. So next time I'm in that position with someone who understands how to do it, I need to embrace the moment.
Here's my question. At the moment, were you thinking like, oh, I should do this, but I really don't feel like dealing with it, so I won't? Or did it occur to you later like, oh, wow, that would have been a really good opportunity. I wish I'd thought of it.
No, I was thinking, oh, I should do this, but I really don't feel like it.
Well, and I will say you didn't mention it to me because my happiness bully. So I would immediately have been like, no, reins are over to you. You drive.
So next time we're in London, Gretch.
Okay. Next time, it'll be a good excuse to go on another sisterly adventure.
Yes. All right, what's your gold star this week?
Okay, I want to give a gold star to my husband, Jamie, because our kitchen sink had a bad smell, right? And I just said to him, hey, I noticed that our kitchen sink had a bad smell. I didn't say anything more than that. And I was kind of like, oh, I hope this is one of these situations where a problem just magically goes away on its own. And I'm willing to live with that for a couple of weeks and see if it plays out that way, right? Yeah. Every once in a while it works, but usually it does not work. But so next thing I know, Jamie had gone online, looked up, what do you do with this problem? And as so often is the case, when you ask for help, when you identify the problem and see if you can find the answer, he found it and he ground up some salt and ice in some kind of way. I didn't really inquire as to exactly what he did, but he fixed it. And I was just so happy that this thing that I was sort of preparing myself to be an unpleasant, and I do not like bad smells, but it didn't occur to me to just try to fix it. I give him a gold star because he had the impulse to let's just fix this or see if there's an easy fix. And there was.
Thank you, Jamie. Gold star.
Thank you, Jamie. And the resource for this week. Okay, we are having a sale on our merch, on the Happier merch. To show appreciation for listeners, we are offering big summer discounts on all the Happier podcast merchandise. So you can get the mug for $12.91. You can get the Onward and Upward women's t-shirt in Blue Lagoon for $13.95. You can get the Days Are Long canvas pouch for $9.60, among other items. Listen, you gave me a canvas pouch for Christmas, and I use it all the time. You can visit the-happiness-project.com to look around, stock up on whatever's on sale, and that is through August 10th.
Yay, love a good sale.
What are we reading? Elizabeth, what are you reading?
I am reading Stash, My Life in Hiding by Laura Cathcart Robbins.
And I am reading The Radiant Way by Margaret Drabble. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Shape your space to shape your behavior. Let us know if you try it and how it works for you.
Thanks to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft.
And if you like the show, please be sure to tell a friend. We really appreciate that. And here's your rhyming reminder. I think it's the first time I've mentioned this one. If the show sparks joy in your soul, nudge others to enroll.
I like it. Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward. Listen, the thing that I really love of our merch is the case for my AirPods, because, I'm pulling that out of my pocket many, many times a day, and it always gives me like a little jolt of happiness to see our logo on there.
Yes, plus it has that nice, slick texture.
It is so satisfying to the touch. Even before Life in 5 Senses, I was like, I love this is so good. It's such a good feeling in the hand. From the Onward Project.